So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Become Guard of Arceus in Pokemon? So let's start the series. The Hall of Origin existed in a space that was not quite place. It was an aperture in the fabric of reality, a silent cathedral of refracted light where the concept of ground was merely suggestion and the walls were made of frozen auroras. Naruto Uzumaki stood at its center, his chakra collapsed inward like a dying star, his lungs still burning with the phantom pain of a wound that was no longer there. Before him, Arceus did not float so much as assert its existence, 1,000 eyes that were one eye, a form that shifted between equine grace and the terrible geometry of something older than matter. The silence between them was not empty. It was packed with the weight of judgment. You died well, Arceus said. The voice did not come from the creature. It came from inside Naruto's own skull, from the marrow of bones that had just stopped breaking. The fox within you. The boy who hated you. The friend who could not reach you in time. You died holding them all. Naruto's hand went to his chest. No hole. No blood. Just the memory of Sasuke's hand, of lightning and failure. This isn't the Pure Land. No. Then what? Arceus shifted. For a moment it looked almost like Kurama, the same ancient weariness, the same weight of years. I have watched your world fracture and reform across 1,000 cycles. I have seen the sage of 6 paths rise and fall, watched his sons repeat their father's mistakes through endless generations. But you were not supposed to die there. Naruto laughed. It was a hollow sound, stripped of the bravado that had carried him through childhood. Pretty sure Sasuke disagreed. Madara manipulated the boy. Black Zetsu corrupted the script. Your death was a miscalculation in a war older than your planet. Arceus stepped forward, if stepping was the word for what it did. The light around them bent. I am offering you purpose beyond that death. I don't want purpose. The words came out flat. Exhausted. Naruto looked down at his hands, still calloused, still scarred, still his. I want to go back. I want to. His voice cracked. I never got to say goodbye. To anyone. Sakura. Kakashi-sensei. Iruka. They don't even know I'm gone. Arceus completed the sentence without cruelty. They will mourn. They will rebuild. They will tell stories of Uzumaki Naruto, the boy who saved them all. And then they will age, and wither, and pass into whatever awaits them. The silence returned. Naruto felt it pressing against his skin, against the chakra that still pulsed weakly in his core. Kurama was silent. That hurt most of all. Why am I here? He finally asked. Not defiance. Not hope. Just the flat curiosity of someone who had already lost everything. Arceus extended one crystalline limb. Light gathered at its tip, not blinding, but deep. Ancient. There is a rot in the spaces between your world and others. It does not consume flesh. It consumes balance. I have contained it for longer than your sun has burned, but containment is not solution. I need someone who understands sacrifice. Someone who has held a demon inside himself and chosen love over hatred. I'm not special. Hashirama. Failed his brother. Failed his village. Died with regrets choking his heart. Arceus's voice was not cruel, but it was unflinching. Madara, consumed by vengeance. The sage himself, could not reconcile his sons. But you, Naruto Uzumaki, looked at the monster inside you and called him friend. You looked at the boy who murdered you and called him brother. That is not power. That is something rarer. Naruto's knees buckled. He didn't fall, there was nowhere to fall to, but the weight of existence pressed down regardless. I'm tired. I know. I don't want to fight anymore. I know. I want to rest. Arceus waited. The light around them dimmed, as if giving Naruto space to breathe. When the original one spoke again, its voice was quieter. You will not rest. Not ever. That is the cost. Immortality is not a gift, it is a sentence. You will watch civilizations rise and crumble. You will outlive every bond you form. You will forget faces, then names, then the sound of laughter. And still, you will stand. Naruto looked up. For the first time, he met the 1,000-eyed gaze without flinching. Then why ask me? Because you will stand anyway. A pause. And because I am tired too. That broke something open in Naruto's chest. Not the plea, but the honesty. This god, this creator of worlds, admitting exhaustion. Admitting need. He thought of Sasuke's face in that final moment. The horror. The regret. The way his hand had shaken as the lightning pierced through. He thought of Kurama's voice, silent now, perhaps forever. He thought of all the children in all the villages who would grow up orphaned by endless cycles of hatred. One condition, Naruto said. Name it. I don't command anyone. Not ever. If I'm supposed to protect whatever needs protecting, I do it my way. No forcing creatures to fight for me. No treating them like weapons. Arceus almost smiled. The expression rippled across its form like light through water. The legendaries choose their champions. I would not have it any other way. The limb extended further. Light touched Naruto's chest, not the wound, but the space behind it, the hollow where Kurama had once roared and comforted and eventually loved him. The change was not painless. It was fire and ice in the moment between heartbeats when the world holds its breath. Naruto felt his chakra, his own, not Kurama's, ignite with something new. Something that tasted like starlight and smelled like rain on untouched grass. Magic, he realized. Not chakra. Not quite. A fusion that would take centuries to understand. When it ended, he was still standing. He was still Naruto. But something else lived in his shadow now. Something that would never leave. 300 years later, the village of Lummenath burned. Naruto watched from the hillside as flames consumed wooden homes and stone temples with equal hunger. Below, shapes moved through the smoke, not Pokemon, but humans wearing the pelts of creatures they had slaughtered. Their hands held weapons carved from bones, from claws, from the teeth of things that should never have been killed. The order of the final hide. They had risen slowly, quietly, building their doctrine across generations. The central tenet was simple: legendary Pokemon were not gods to be worshipped, but tyrants to be overthrown. Humans had been subservient too long. It was time to reclaim the world. Naruto had watched them grow. He had done nothing. Arceus's command echoed across the centuries: observe. Protect the balance. Intervene only when the rot touches the divine. The rot was touching now. Below, in the village square, 3 figures knelt in chains. Priestesses of Ho-Oh, their robes still smoking from the fires set to their temple. The order's leader, a broad-shouldered woman named Magda, her face painted with the blood of a slain Zatu, raised an axe carved from the femur of something massive. For too long, Magda shouted, her voice carrying through the smoke. The so-called legendaries have hoarded power. They demand worship while we starve. They claim to maintain balance while their battles destroy our crops. No more! The crowd roared. Naruto's jaw tightened. Observe, Arceus had said. Do not interfere in human affairs. But the priestesses were not just humans. One of them, the youngest, a girl no older than 12, glowed faintly. A mark on her palm. Ho-Oh's blessing, passed through bloodlines. Not a trainer's bond. Something older. Sacred. Magda raised the axe higher. Naruto moved. He did not run. Running implied effort, implied distance. He simply unfolded across the space between hillside and square, his body dissolving into light and reforming in the path of the descending blade. His hand caught the femur axe an inch from the girl's neck. The silence that followed was absolute. Magda stared at him. The crowd stared. The priestesses, soaked in their own terror, stared at the man who had appeared from nowhere, his orange clothing faded to dusty gold across 3 centuries, his whisker marks still visible beneath eyes that had seen too much. Who? Magda started. Don't, Naruto said. His voice was quiet. It had been quiet for a long time now. The boy who shouted his name from rooftops had eroded somewhere in the first 100 years. Drop the axe. Walk away. Take your people and never come near a shrine again. Magda's face twisted. Not fear, fury. You dare, I don't know what trick this is, but... She yanked at the axe. It didn't move. Naruto's grip was not human anymore. It hadn't been human for a very long time. You're killing children, he said. Children who never hurt anyone. Children whose only crime was being born into families that remember what the world looked like before your kind decided they knew better than gods. The gods abandoned us, Magda screamed. Spittle flew from her lips. Where was Ho-Oh when the plague took my son? Where was Lugia when the storms drowned our crops? They don't care. They never cared. Naruto looked at her. Really looked. He saw the grief beneath the rage, the wound that had festered into poison. He had seen it before. 100 times. 1,000. In ninja who lost families to war. In villagers who lost homes to tailed beasts. In Sasuke's eyes, the night he left Konoha. I know, he said quietly. I know what it's like to lose everything. To scream at the sky and get nothing back but silence. His grip on the axe didn't loosen. But this. He nodded toward the burning village. This isn't grief. This is murder dressed in mourning clothes. And I won't let it stand. Magda's followers surged forward. Naruto raised one hand. The magic that Arceus had planted in his chest 3 centuries ago bloomed. It was not attack, it was presence. A weight that pressed against souls rather than bodies. The Order stumbled, fell to their knees, clutched their heads as something ancient and terrible looked through Naruto's eyes. Not him. Not fully. The thing that lived in his shadow now, watching. Magda alone remained standing. She was strong. He gave her that. "Who are you?" she whispered. Naruto released the axe. It clattered to the stones. "No one. Someone who should have stopped this centuries ago, before it became a religion." He turned to the priestesses. "Unchain them. Leave Lummenath. If I see any of you again, I won't hold back." The Order fled. They dragged Magda with her, still screaming curses, still promising return. Naruto watched them go. Then he knelt beside the youngest priestess, whose mark still glowed faintly on her palm. "You're safe," he said. It felt hollow. He'd said it before? To orphans in burning villages, to Pokemon whose mothers had been slaughtered, to children who would never stop screaming. The words had lost meaning somewhere in the 2nd century. The girl stared at him. Her eyes were too old for her face. "You're not human." "No." "Then what?" Naruto considered the question. 300 years, and he still didn't have an answer. "Tired," he finally said. "I'm very, very tired." He stood. The village still burned around them, but the flames had begun to gutter. Whatever blessing Ho had placed on this place, it was fighting back. The priestesses would survive. The village would rebuild. Life would continue. It always did. Naruto walked toward the hills. Behind him, the youngest priestess called out, "Wait! What's your name?" He didn't stop. Names were for people who stayed in one place long enough to be remembered. He had learned that lesson the hard way, somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd generations of friends who aged and died, while he remained unchanged. But the girl was persistent. She ran after him, grabbed his sleeve. He looked down at her. The mark on her palm pulsed gently. "Please," she said. "I need to know who to thank." Naruto closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were softer than they'd been in decades. "My name," he said slowly, "was Naruto. A long time ago. In a place that doesn't exist anymore." He vanished. The girl stood alone on the hillside, watching the space where he had been. Above her, the smoke cleared, and for just a moment, something like a rainbow arched across the sky. Ho was watching too. 3 weeks later, Arceus called him home. The Hall of Origin felt different now. Smaller somehow. Or perhaps Naruto had simply grown into its scale. He stood before the original one and waited. "You intervened," Arceus said. "Yes." "You were instructed to observe." "I know. The Order of the Final Hide is a human problem. They cannot truly harm the legendaries. They cannot. They were going to kill a child." Naruto's voice cut through the divine space like a blade. "A child blessed by Ho. A child who had done nothing except be born." Arceus was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was different. Softer. "You have done this before. Protected individuals. Saved lives. And each time, you return here with the same defiance in your eyes. Because each time, you tell me I was wrong. I tell you that you broke the rules. The rules are wrong." The words hung between them like thunder. Arceus's form rippled, contracted, expanded. For a terrifying moment, Naruto felt the full weight of the original one's attention, not angry, but curious. "Explain," Arceus said. Naruto stepped forward. 3 centuries of exhaustion lined his face, his posture, the spaces between his words. "I've watched humans hunt Pokemon for sport. I've watched them burn forests, poison rivers, slaughter entire species for profit. And I've watched you do nothing. Because balance. Because non-interference. Because..." His voice broke. "Because I'm supposed to protect the idea of the world, not the actual living things in it. The balance must be maintained." "Why?" The word exploded from him. Light flared around his hands, divine magic responding to emotion. "Why does balance matter more than them? More than the Pokemon who trust humans, who love them, who die for them? More than the children who never asked to be born into a world where gods play chess with their lives?" Arceus regarded him. The 1,000 eyes blinked in sequence, like waves across an ocean. "Because," the original one said slowly, "if the balance breaks, everything ends. Not just humans. Not just Pokemon. Everything. The rot I spoke of 3 centuries ago, it grows. It feeds on imbalance. On suffering. On the very emotions that drive you to protect." Naruto's hands dropped. The light faded. Then tell me how to fight it. Really fight it. Not just watch from the shadows while people die. You are not ready. Then make me ready. The silence stretched. Naruto felt the weight of Arceus's consideration pressing against his soul, testing, probing. When the original one spoke again, its voice carried something that might have been sorrow. Readiness requires sacrifice. Not of life, you cannot die. But of self. The more you draw on the power I gave you, the more you become something else. Something less human. Are you willing to pay that price? Naruto thought of the girl on the hillside. Her two old eyes. Her desperate need for a name. He thought of Sasuke's face, frozen in horror, as the lightning pierced through. He thought of Kurama's voice, silent for 300 years. I'm already less human, he said quietly. Every year I forget more. The sound of Irika's laughter. The way Sakura's smile looked in sunlight. The taste of ramen from that little shop near the academy. He looked up. If I'm going to lose those memories anyway, let me lose them for something that matters. Arceus bowed its head. It was the first time in 3 centuries that Naruto had seen the original one show anything resembling respect. Then go, Arceus said. Go to the rot. Face it. And when you return, if you return, you will understand why balance matters. Or you will be broken enough to finally serve properly. Naruto turned without another word. The Hall of Origin dissolved around him, and he fell, not through space, but through the spaces between space, through the cracks in reality where the route waited. He fell for a long time. When he landed, he was in a forest that should not exist. Trees grew upside down, their roots reaching for a sky that wasn't there. The air tasted of rust and old grief. And in the clearing ahead, something ancient and wrong was feeding on the corpse of a Pokemon. Naruto had never seen this creature before. It was not in any legendary registry. It was not in any human record. It was simply there, a shape that hurt to look at, a presence that made his divine magic recall. The rot. It looked up as he approached. Its face, if it had a face, twisted into something like amusement. Another guardian, it said. Its voice was 1,000 dying whispers. Arceus sends another lamb to slaughter. Naruto's hands curled into fists. Divine magic gathered in his chest, hot and terrible and hungry. I'm not a lamb, he said quietly. I'm the thing that happens when gods stop paying attention. He attacked. The battle that followed lasted 3 days. When it ended, Naruto stood alone in the corrupted clearing, surrounded by the remains of something that had existed before time had meaning. His body was broken in a dozen places. His chakra was almost gone. And the divine magic, that fusion of Arceus's gift and his own nature, had burned so brightly that he could feel pieces of himself missing. Memories. Emotions. The shape of laughter, the warmth of friendship. He didn't know what he had lost yet. He would discover it slowly, over decades, as he reached for faces that no longer existed and found only static. But the rot was gone. For now. Naruto looked up at the inverted trees, at the sky that wasn't there, at the corpse of the Pokemon the rot had been feeding on, a Xatu, its eyes still open, still watching something in a future it would never see. He knelt beside it. Placed one hand on its feathered chest. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have been faster. The Xatu's eyes moved. Just slightly. Just enough to meet his. You will lose more, a voice said in his mind, not the Xatu, but something through the Xatu, a prophecy echoing across time. You will lose everything. And still, you will stand. The eyes went still. Naruto remained kneeling for a long time. When he finally stood, his face was unreadable. 3 centuries of loneliness. An eternity of loss ahead. A god who saw him as a tool. And a rot that would return, again and again, because that was what rot did. He should have felt despair. Instead, he felt something else. Something that had survived 300 years of erosion, that had burned in the battle against the rot, that had refused to die no matter how much of himself he lost. Hope. Tarnished. Faded. Worn thin as old cloth. But still there. He looked at the sky that wasn't there. All right, he said quietly. Show me what's next. And the world answered. The forest that should not exist dissolved around him like morning frost under sunlight. One moment Naruto stood among inverted trees and the corpse of a prophet. The next, he knelt on rain-slick stone at the base of a mountain that scraped against the underbelly of clouds. His body remembered the 3-day battle even if his mind was already forgetting pieces of it. The rot's face, the sound of its dying, the exact color of the Xatu's eyes in that final moment. gone. Or fading. He couldn't tell which anymore. The mountain loomed above him. Spear pillar, humans called it. Sacred ground to those who remembered the old ways. Home to Dialga and Palkia, though the brothers rarely stayed in one place long enough to call anything home. Naruto had visited once, decades ago, seeking answers about time and space and whether either could give him back what he'd lost. They couldn't. They had been sorry about that, in their distant, godlike way. Now he was back. Not by choice. The rot's death had pulled him here, dragged him across reality like a fish on a line. He didn't understand why. He didn't understand anything anymore, except that his chest ached where the divine magic had burned hottest and his hands still shook from the effort of staying whole. Rain fell. Cold. Persistent. It plastered his faded orange clothing to his skin and ran in rivulets down his face. He let it. After 3 centuries, weather was just weather, a backdrop to loneliness, nothing more. You're bleeding. The voice came from above. Naruto looked up. A Gardevoir stood on an outcropping of rock, her white dress somehow untouched by the rain, her green hair moving in wind that didn't exist. She was old, older than any Gardevoir he'd ever seen. Ancient, even by Pokémon standards. Her eyes held the weight of centuries, and in them, Naruto saw recognition. I'm always bleeding, he said. It wasn't entirely metaphor. The rot's corruption had left wounds that wouldn't close, black lines tracing across his skin like cracks in porcelain. Just usually on the inside. The Gardevoir descended. Not floating, stepping, as if the air itself had decided to support her. She landed before him without a sound. You killed something that should not be killable, she said. I felt it die. We all felt it. Congratulations? She tilted her head. That was not praise. That was acknowledgement of consequence. The rot was not merely a creature, it was a socket. A point where something older pressed against reality. By destroying it, you have opened a door. Naruto's stomach clenched. What kind of door? The kind that should remain closed. She looked toward the mountain's peak, and for the first time, Naruto saw fear in her ancient eyes. The kind that things are already crawling through. Above them, the sky cracked. Not figuratively. Not metaphorically. The rain stopped because the clouds split, a wound of violet light tearing across the firmament from horizon to horizon. Through the wound, something pressed, not a creature, not yet, but the promise of a creature, a weight that made the rot feel like a mosquito bite. Naruto was on his feet without remembering standing. Divine magic surged in his chest, responding to threat before his mind caught up. The black lines on his skin pulsed with light. What? He breathed. Is that? The Gardevoir's voice was very quiet. The first death. The shadow that existed before Arceus brought form to chaos. The thing that creation was built on top of to keep it buried. The wound widened. Something that might have been an eye, or a galaxy, or an absence where both should be, peered through. The rot was its anchor. The Gardevoir continued. The one point where it could touch reality without breaking through. You destroyed the anchor. Now it is interested. Naruto wanted to scream. Wanted to demand why Arceus hadn't warned him, hadn't explained, hadn't given him the information he needed to make a different choice. But the screams had dried up somewhere in the 2nd century, replaced by a quiet, exhausted acceptance. Can it fully enter? He asked. Not yet. But it is learning. Adapting. And when it finds a way. She gestured at the mountain, at the spear pillar above them, at the sacred space where gods of time and space sometimes rested. It will come here first. To unmake the concepts that hold reality together. Naruto looked at the wound in the sky. At the thing pressing against it. At the Gardevoir who had apparently been waiting for him. Why me? He asked. Why did you come to me specifically? Because you are Arceus's champion. Because you killed the rot. Because... She paused, and something almost like pity crossed her features. Because you have already lost so much that the first death cannot threaten you with loss. You are immune to its primary weapon. What's its primary weapon? Hope. The word hung between them like a physical thing. Naruto stared at her. She stared back. The first death does not kill with violence, she said quietly. It kills by showing you that nothing matters. That your struggles are meaningless. That the people you love will die and be forgotten and the universe will not notice. It kills by convincing you to stop. And you... She gestured at him, at the 3 centuries of exhaustion carved into his face, at the fading memories and the quiet voice and the eyes that had seen too much. You have already been through that fire. You are still standing. That makes you dangerous to it. Naruto laughed. It was a broken sound, stripped of humor. I'm not standing because I'm strong. I'm standing because I don't know how to fall anymore. Same thing. Above them, the wound pulsed. The first death pressed harder. And somewhere on the mountain, something answered, a cry that was not quite sound, a vibration that traveled through stone and bone and soul. Dialga. In pain. Naruto moved without thinking. The Gardevoir followed, her ancient grace matching his divine speed as they climbed toward the peak. The rain had stopped entirely now, replaced by an oppressive stillness that made the world feel held breath. They found Dialga at the summit. The temporal god lay crumpled against the pillars of Spear Pillar, his massive form flickering between moments, here then gone, then here again but wrong, younger and older simultaneously. Crystal formations grew from his hide, translucent and violet, pulsing with the same light as the wound in the sky. What happened? Naruto dropped beside the god, his hands hovering over the crystals. They radiated cold, not temperature cold, but existential cold, the absence of warmth in places warmth should be. The first death reached for him, the Gardevoir said. It cannot enter fully, but it can touch. And when it touches something that exists in time, it crystallizes that existence. Freezes it. Makes it still. Dialga's eye opened. It found Naruto with an effort that spoke of immense pain. Little guardian, the god's voice echoed in his mind, thin and flickering. I remember you. From before. When you asked about time. Yeah. Naruto's throat tight. You said you couldn't help me. Cannot help anyone now. The stillness spreads. If it reaches my core, time itself will. The thought trailed into static. Tell me how to stop it. Cannot be stopped. Only slowed. Only, Dialga's form flickered violently, crystals spreading across his neck. The girl. The priestess. Whole is chosen. She carries fire that burns outside time. Bring her here. She may. The connection broke. Dialga's eye closed, his body stabilizing into a single moment, present, barely, but crusted with crystal that continued to spread. Naruto stood. His hands were shaking. Not from fear. The girl, he said. From Lummenath. 3 weeks ago. She had a mark. I know of her. The Gardevoir's voice was carefully neutral. She is 3 weeks older now. Still recovering from the fire. Still asking questions about the man who saved her. I have to bring her here. You have to bring a 12-year-old human to face the thing that is currently crippling a god of time. Yes. She will die. Not if I protect her. The Gardevoir looked at him for a long moment. You cannot protect anyone from the first death. You can only stand beside them while it tries to break them. And it will try. It will show her everything she loves burning. It will show her future empty. It will show her that her faith in Ho is a lie, that the gods do not care, that she is alone. Naruto's jaw tightened. Then I'll stand beside her. Why? The question was simple. Ancient. It demanded an answer that went deeper than duty or orders or divine mission. Naruto thought about it. Really thought, for the first time in decades. Because someone stood beside me, he finally said. When I was alone. When I was angry. When I was so full of hatred I couldn't see anything else. Someone stood beside me and refused to leave. And it saved me. Not completely, I'm still broken, still losing pieces of myself still. He stopped. Swallowed. But I'm here. I'm still here. And that's because of them. Iruka, the Gardevoir said softly. Kakashi. Jiraiya. Sakura. Sasuke. Kurama. He flinched at the names. They hurt. They always hurt. You know about them? I know many things. I have lived longer than most legendaries. She paused. Long enough to forget more than you have. Long enough to understand that names become wounds after enough time. Naruto met her eyes. For the first time in centuries, he felt something like kinship. Not friendship, that required too much hope, but recognition. Another creature who understood what it meant to outlive everything. What's your name? He asked. I forgot it 600 years ago. The humans call me the Oracle of the Lake. It is enough. It's not. She almost smiled. No. But it is what I have. Above them, the wound pulsed. Dialga's crystals spread. And somewhere in a rebuilt village 3 weeks' journey away, a 12-year-old girl with a glowing mark on her palm was about to have her life interrupted by a man who should not exist. Naruto turned toward the mountain's edge. I'll be back. With the girl. How long does Dialga have? A week. Perhaps less. The first death is impatient. A week. He nodded, more to himself than to her. I can make that work. One thing, the Gardevoir said as he prepared to leave. The girl. She will ask questions. She will want to understand. And you. She looked at him with those ancient, knowing eyes. You will have to decide how much of yourself to show her. Whether to let her in. Whether to risk another bond that will end in grief. Naruto was silent for a long moment. I know, he finally said. I know exactly what I'm risking. But she's 12. She just watched her home burn. She met a stranger who saved her life and vanished without explanation. And now that stranger is coming back to drag her into something that will probably kill her. He looked at the sky, at the wound, at the thing pressing against reality. The least I can do is be honest with her. About who I am. About what she's facing. About what it costs. And if she says no? Then I find another way. He paused. But she won't say no. How can you be sure? Naruto thought of the girl's eyes. Too old for her face. Desperate for a name, for a connection, for something to hold onto in a world that had just tried to burn her alive. Because I know what it's like, he said quietly. To be 12 and alone and desperate for someone to see you. She'll come. Not because she's brave, though she is. But because staying in that village, pretending nothing happened, would kill something inside her that's still fighting to live. He stepped off the mountain. The Gardevoir watched him fall, watched him vanish into light, watched the sky crack and pulse and press against the boundaries of reality. Arceus, she whispered to the empty air. Your champion is more dangerous than you know. Not because of the power you gave him, but because he still hopes. After everything. After 3 centuries of loss and erosion and slow forgetting. He still hopes. Above her, the first death pressed harder. And far below, Naruto Uzumaki raced toward a rebuilt village and a girl with a glowing mark and a future that would break him further. He went anyway. Because that was what he did. That was all he had left. The village of Lummenath looked different in daylight. 3 weeks of rebuilding had erased most of the fire damage. New wooden walls stood where old ones had burned. Fresh thatch-covered roofs that had collapsed. The temple of Ho still stood at the village center, its stones blackened but intact, a testament to something that refused to die. Naruto watched from the same hillside as before. The same position. The same silence. 3 weeks that felt like 3 days that felt like 3 centuries. Time had stopped meaning much somewhere along the way. He found the girl at the temple. She was helping older priestesses carry water from the well, her small frame straining under buckets that should have been too heavy. The mark on her palm glowed faintly as she worked, responding to something, the temple's residual blessing, maybe, or simply her own stubborn faith. She saw him before he could announce himself. The buckets dropped. Water spilled across stone. The girl's eyes went wide, and for a terrible moment, Naruto saw recognition war with fear. You came back, she whispered. I need your help. The words felt wrong. He should have softened them, explained first, given her time to process. But 3 centuries had eroded his patience for preamble. The first death was spreading. Dialga was dying. There wasn't time for gentle approaches. The girl stared at him. Then, slowly, she nodded. I knew you would, she said. I've been waiting. Naruto blinked. Waiting? You didn't know I was coming. No. She stepped forward, leaving the spilled buckets behind. But Ho showed me. In dreams. A man made of light and shadow, standing between me and something that wanted to freeze the world. I didn't understand until now. She reached him. Looked up. And in her 2 old eyes, Naruto saw something he hadn't seen in centuries, faith. Not in gods, not in legendaries, but in him. A stranger who had saved her life, and then vanished. You shouldn't trust me, he said quietly. You don't know me. I know you stopped an axe from killing me. I know you looked at a burning village and chose to help. I know. She touched her palm, where the mark pulsed. I know Hoa's fire doesn't burn cold around you. That means something. Naruto closed his eyes. When he opened them, he made a decision. My name is Naruto. I'm not from this world. I died 300 years ago, and a god brought me back to protect the balance between humans and Pokemon. I've outlived everyone I ever loved. I'm forgetting their faces. And now something older than your god is trying to break into reality, and the only person who might be able to slow it down is a 12-year-old girl with a magic mark on her hand. He paused. Let the weight of his words settle. You can say no. I'll find another way. But if you come with me, you might die. And even if you don't, you'll see things that will haunt you forever. And I can't promise I'll be able to protect you from all of them. The girl considered this. Her face was very serious, very young, very old. "My name is Ilara," she said. "My parents died in a plague when I was 6. The temple took me in. Hoa's mark appeared when I was 9, and ever since, I've had dreams about fire and rainbows and a man who glows in the dark." She looked at him steadily. "I've been alone for 6 years. I've been waiting for something that mattered. If this is it..." She shrugged, a gesture far too casual for the weight of the conversation. "Then I'm coming." Naruto studied her. Saw the loneliness behind the bravery. Saw the child who had grown up too fast, who had learned to hide fear behind practicality, who had been waiting her whole life for someone to see her. Just like he had once. A lifetime ago. 3 centuries ago. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay. But we do this my way. You stay close. You listen when I tell you to run. And if I say it's too dangerous, you go. No arguments." Ilara nodded. "And in return?" "What?" "You teach me. About your world. About the gods. About why you're so sad." She met his eyes without flinching. "I've been alone long enough to recognize someone else who's alone. You don't have to talk about everything. But don't pretend you're fine. I won't believe you." Naruto stared at her. Then, slowly, something that might have been a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It felt foreign. It felt like a muscle he hadn't used in decades. "You're 12, he said. "Yes. And you just read me like a book." "I've had practice." She gestured at the temple behind her. "Priestesses talk about everything except what actually matters. You learn to read between words." Naruto shook his head. The smile faded, but something warm remained in his chest, a feeling he thought extinct. Not hope. Something smaller. Something that could fit in the spaces between grief. "Come on," he said, offering his hand. "We have a long way to go, and not much time." Ilara took his hand without hesitation. Her small fingers wrapped around his scarred ones, and for a moment, Naruto felt the warmth of Hoa's blessing, not painful, not overwhelming, just present. A small fire in a cold world. "One thing," she said as they started walking. "That thing we're going to fight. The one that's older than Ho." "Yes? What do I call it?" Naruto looked at the sky. At the wound that only he could see, violet and pulsing and pressing against the boundaries of existence. "The first death," he said quietly. "The thing that existed before creation. The shadow that everything was built on top of." Ilara was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very small. "And we're going to fight it?" "We're going to try." "Will we win?" Naruto thought of Dialga, frozen and dying. Thought of the rot, destroyed but replaced by something worse. Thought of 3 centuries of loss, of memories fading, of the slow erosion of everything that had made him human. "I don't know," he admitted. "But we're going to try anyway. Because that's what you do when something tries to break the world. You stand in its way. Even if you can't win. Even if it kills you. You stand." Ilara squeezed his hand. "Then I'll stand with you," she said. "That's what the mark means. Hoa's chosen don't run from fires. We walk into them." Naruto looked down at her. At her 2 old eyes and her small hand in his and her absolute, terrifying faith. For the first time in 3 centuries, he felt something other than exhaustion. He felt responsibility. Not the abstract duty Arceus had given him, but something personal. Something human. This girl believed in him. And he would not let her down. Even if it killed what was left of his humanity. Even if it meant losing more memories, more pieces of himself, more of the person he used to be. He would stand. They climbed the hills together, the immortal and the child, toward a mountain where time was dying and a shadow waited to be born. The journey to Spear Pillar took 4 days. Naruto could have done it in hours alone. With Ilara, he was forced to slow, to walk instead of fold through space, to sleep when her small body gave out and she curled against him like a lost cub seeking warmth. The first night, he sat awake while she slept, watching the stars wheel overhead and feeling the distant pulse of the first death pressing against reality. On the second day, she started asking questions. Who was Kurama? The name hit him like a physical blow. Naruto stumbled, caught himself, kept walking. Beside him, Ilara watched with those 2 old eyes that missed nothing. You said his name, she continued, when you were talking to the Gardevoir. You said he was one of the people who saved you. But the way you said it. She paused, choosing words carefully. It wasn't like the others. It was different. Naruto walked in silence for a long moment. The path wound through foothills now, spear pillar visible in the distance, its peak shrouded in clouds that hadn't moved in days. The stillness was wrong. The whole world felt wrong. Kurama was a fox, he finally said. A nine-tailed fox. In my world, we called them tailed beasts, creatures of pure chakra, so powerful they could level mountains. Kurama was the strongest. And for most of my life, he was trapped inside me. Elara's eyes widened. Trapped? Like a prisoner? Yes. The day I was born, he attacked my village. The leader sealed him inside me to save everyone. And for 12 years, everyone hated me because of it. Because I was the monster who had destroyed their homes, even though I was just a baby. Even though I had no choice. That's horrible. It was. Naruto's voice was quiet. But Kurama hated it too. He hated being trapped. He hated me for being his prison. For years, we fought constantly. He tried to take over my body, feed me negative emotions, make me lose control. I thought he was pure evil. They walked through a meadow of wildflowers. The colors seemed muted today, as if something was draining the life from the world. What changed? Elara asked. Naruto was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. But finally, softly, he spoke. I stopped fighting him. Not physically, I stopped hating him. I realized he wasn't evil. He was angry. Scared. Alone. Trapped inside a human for decades, treated like a weapon, never chosen, never loved. His voice cracked. I knew what that felt like. I'd lived it too. So I reached out. Not as a jailer, as a friend. And he responded? Slowly. It took years. But eventually. Naruto stopped walking. His hands were shaking. Eventually he started talking to me. Giving me advice. Protecting me when I was too weak to protect myself. He swallowed hard. He became family. The closest thing I had to a father, after Jiraiya died. Elara waited. She was learning that silence was sometimes the kindest question. The day I died, Naruto continued, his voice barely above a whisper. I used all of his chakra. All of it. We merged completely, became something new, something brighter than either of us alone. And when it was over, when I'd used everything he had, he stopped. Pressed his palm against his chest, over the space where Kurama had once lived. He's gone, Elara said softly. It wasn't a question. He's gone. I felt him fade. Felt him say goodbye. And then, Naruto's eyes were wet, though no tears fell. And then I died too. And when Arceus brought me back, Kurama didn't come with me. He was just empty space. A hole where someone used to be. Elara reached up and took his hand. Her small fingers wrapped around his scarred ones, and she said nothing. Just held on. After a long moment, Naruto squeezed back. They kept walking. That night, the dreams came for Elara. Naruto woke to her screaming, not the sharp scream of physical pain, but something deeper, more terrible. A sound that came from the part of a person that believed the world was safe, discovering it was wrong. She was thrashing in her sleep, her small body arched against the ground, the mark on her palm blazing so brightly it illuminated the entire campsite. Above them, the wound in the sky pulsed in rhythm with her screams. Elara! Naruto grabbed her shoulders, tried to shake her awake. Her skin was burning hot, not fever, but fire, the same holy fire that marked Ho as chosen. Elara, wake up! Her eyes snapped open. For one terrible moment, they weren't her eyes. They were violet and ancient and hungry, filled with the same emptiness that pressed against the sky. The first death looked at Naruto through a child's face. Little guardian, it whispered, using Elara's voice but not her words. You brought me exactly what I needed. A soul so bright, so full of faith. She will make a beautiful door. Naruto's hands tightened on her shoulders. Divine magic surged in his chest, not attacking, but pushing, forcing the presence back, out, away from the girl he had promised to protect. Get out of her! He snarled. His voice was not entirely human. The thing in his shadow stirred, waking, watching. Or what? The first death laughed, a sound that froze the air, that made the grass beneath them wither and blacken. You cannot hurt me, guardian. You cannot even reach me. I am beyond your little god's reach, beyond your little world's understanding. I am. You are nothing. Naruto's palm pressed against Elara's forehead. Not hard, gently, almost reverently. And into her, he poured something he hadn't used in centuries. Memory. Not his own, he had too few left to spare. But Kurama's. The fox's presence, preserved in the deepest parts of his soul, wrapped around the hole where his friend used to be. He couldn't give Elara power. He couldn't give her protection. But he could give her warmth. The same warmth Kurama had given him, in the dark hours when the world felt empty. The violet in Elara's eyes flickered, dimmed. And then, with a scream that was entirely her own, she slammed back into her body. The first death's presence vanished. The mark on her palm subsided to its normal glow. And Elara collapsed against Naruto's chest, shaking and crying and clinging to him like he was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. I saw, she gasped between sobs. I saw everything, everyone I love burning, Hoa's temple, falling, you, dying, and then nothing, just nothing, forever and ever and… Shh. Naruto held her. His own hands were shaking. Shh. I've got you. You're here. You're safe. It showed me that none of it matters. Her voice was small, broken. That fighting is pointless. That we're all going to die and be forgotten and the universe won't notice. It showed me, Naruto. It made me feel it. And for a moment, she looked up at him, and her eyes held a horror deeper than anything a child should know. For a moment, I believed it. Naruto's throat tightened. He knew that feeling. Had lived with it for centuries, some days more than others. The weight of meaninglessness. The whisper that nothing you did mattered, that loss was inevitable, that hope was just a trick your mind played to keep you suffering. I know, he whispered. I know. How do you fight it? How do you keep going when you know that everyone you love will die, that you'll forget them, that… Because they're worth it. Elara blinked. Her tears continued, but something in her expression shifted. The people I've lost, Naruto said slowly, feeling for words that had become foreign across centuries. Iruka, Kakashi, Sakura, Sasuke, Kurama. They're gone. Most of them, I can't even remember their faces clearly anymore. But I remember how they made me feel. I remember that they believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I remember that they loved me, and I loved them, and that love… He touched his chest over his heart. That love is still here. Even when everything else fades. It's still here. Elara was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, You really believe that? I have to. Because the alternative… He looked up at the wound in the sky, at the thing pressing against reality. The alternative is what that thing wants. Giving up. Letting the emptiness win. And I refuse. I refuse. She studied his face. Saw the exhaustion carved into every line, the grief behind his eyes, the way his hands still trembled from using power he couldn't fully control. And somehow, impossibly, she smiled. You're the saddest person I've ever met, she said. But you're also the bravest. Naruto stared at her. Then, slowly, a laugh escaped him, rusty, unpracticed, but real. You're 12. How many sad people have you met? Enough. She leaned against him, her small body finally relaxing. Will it come back? The dream? Yes. Probably. It knows about you now. It knows you're important. Am I important? Your Ho is chosen. You're the only one who can slow Dialga's crystallization. And you're… He paused. You're the first person in centuries who's looked at me and seen someone worth knowing. Not a guardian. Not a tool. Just me. Elara was quiet for a moment. Then, very softly, Can I call you something? What? Not guardian. Not Naruto, that's your name, but it's also sad, because it belonged to someone who died a long time ago. Can I have something else? Something just for me to call you? Naruto considered this. The request was strange, intimate, terrifying. Names had power. Names meant bonds. Names meant grief, when the one who used them eventually died. But she was asking. And she had just faced the first death and survived. And she was 12 years old and alone and desperate for connection. If you want, he said slowly, what would you call me? Elara thought about it. Her brow furrowed in concentration, a child's expression that made her look her age for once. In the temple stories, she finally said, there's a figure who appears in the oldest texts. Before Ho, before the legendaries, before almost everything. He's not a god, he's something else. Someone who walks between worlds, carrying light and darkness. The stories call him Kage no Hikari. Shadow Light. Naruto's breath caught. He had never heard that name. But something in his soul, the part that had fused with Arceus' magic, the part that carried Kurama's warmth, the part that remembered loving and losing and loving anyway, resonated with it. Shadow Light, he repeated. Because I'm both? Because you're made of both. Elara met his eyes. You're sad, but you keep going. You've lost everything, but you still love. You're not human anymore, but you remember what it meant to be. That's not just light or shadow. That's both. That's you? Naruto was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Okay. When we're alone. When it's just us. You can call me that. Elara smiled, a real smile, not the tooled mask she usually wore. It transformed her face, made her look like the child she should have been allowed to be. Thank you? She whispered. Thank you? He looked up at the wound in the sky. Now try to sleep. We have a long way to go tomorrow, and I don't think the first death is done with us yet. She curled against him, trusting, vulnerable. Naruto wrapped an arm around her and stared at the stars. For the first time in centuries, he had something to protect that wasn't an abstract concept. A person. A child. Someone who had given him a name that meant something. The first death had tried to break her with despair. It had failed. But it would try again. And next time, it might not aim for Elara. Next time, it might aim for him. The third day brought them to the base of Spear Pillar. The mountain loomed above them, its peak lost in clouds that churned with violet light. The stillness that had haunted their journey was thicker here, pressing against skin and soul like the weight of deep water. Even the wind had stopped. Even the birds had fled. Naruto paused at the base of the first trail. His hand found Elara's shoulder. From here, it gets dangerous. The first death knows we're coming. It will try to stop us, not physically, but mentally. You'll see things. Hear things. Feel things that aren't real. You have to remember, it's lying. All of it is lying. Elara nodded. Her face was pale but determined. The mark on her palm glowed steadily, a small flame against the gathering dark. What will you see? She asked. Naruto considered lying. Considered protecting her from the truth. But she had earned honesty. I'll see them, he said quietly. Everyone I've lost. Everyone I'm forgetting. They'll come back, not as themselves, but as weapons. The first death will use their faces, their voices, to make me doubt. To make me stop. Will you? No, he said it firmly, but something in his chest wavered. I don't think so. But I've never faced something like this before. I don't know what it can do. Elara took his hand. Her small fingers were warm, burning with whole as fire. Then we face it together, she said. Shadow light and ember. Ember? She touched her palm. That's what the priestesses call me. Because my fire is small but it doesn't go out. Naruto looked at her, this child who had lost everything and still found ways to hope, who had faced the first death and survived, who had given him a name that made him feel, for the first time in centuries, like he might still be someone worth knowing. Ember, he repeated. It fits. They climbed. The mountain fought them. Not with rock slides or avalanches, those would have been merciful. It fought with memory. Every step brought visions, whispers, the faces of the dead pressing close. For Elara, it was her parents. She saw them as they had been before the plague, young, laughing, reaching for her with hands that had never hurt anyone. Then she saw them as they died, skin gray, eyes pleading, mouths open in silent screams. They didn't suffer, she whispered, clutching Naruto's hand so hard her knuckles went white. The priestesses told me. They went in their sleep. It was peaceful. That's a lie, the vision of her father hissed. We were awake. We were aware. We called for you, and you never came. Elara's steps faltered. Naruto caught her, held her upright. It's lying, he said firmly. Your parents loved you. They wouldn't want you to suffer. How do you know? Her voice was small, cracking. How do you know anything? Naruto pulled her close, pressed his hand to her chest, over her heart. I know because love doesn't end. It changes, it fades sometimes when the ones who held it are gone, but it doesn't lie. What you feel when you remember them, that warmth, that ache, that's real. That's true. The first death can't touch that. Elara took a shaky breath. Then another. The vision of her parents flickered, dissolved, became mountain stone again. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I'm okay. They kept climbing. For Naruto, the visions were worse. He saw Iruka first, the scar across his nose, the warm eyes, the gentle smile that had been the first kindness Naruto ever knew. In life, Iruka had been the one person who saw past the demon container to the lonely child beneath. In death, he was something else. You failed us, Iruka said. His voice was soft, sad, infinitely disappointed. All of us. You were supposed to save everyone. Instead, you died. You left us. And for what? So you could wander this world forever, forgetting our faces? Naruto kept walking, his jaw tight, his eyes forward. I didn't choose to die, he said quietly. You didn't fight hard enough to live. The words cut deeper than any blade. Naruto's step faltered. Behind Iruka, others appeared. Kakashi, his one visible eye filled with grief. Sakura, tears streaming down her face. Jiraiya, shaking his head slowly, disappointment carved into every line. We believed in you, Kakashi said. We trained you. We loved you. And you threw it all away. I didn't. You did. Sakura's voice broke. You promised to bring Sasuke back. You promised to become Hokage. You promised me. And then you died, and I had to live with that. I had to bury you. I had to watch them put flowers on your grave while you were here, alive, forgetting us. Naruto stopped walking. His hands were shaking. His chest ached with a pain that had nothing to do with the rot's wounds. Every word was true. Every accusation was one he had made against himself, 1,000 times, across 3 centuries of lonely existence. They're right, something whispered. Not the first death, something deeper. His own guilt-given voice. You failed them. You're still failing them. Every day you live is a day you chose to abandon them. Shadow light. Ilara's voice. Small. Trembling. But there. Naruto looked down. She was clutching his hand, her face pale with her own visions, but her eyes were fixed on him. They're lying, she said. All of them. Even the ones that look like people you loved. They're lying. How do you know? The words came out broken, desperate. How do you know they're not right? Ilara touched her palm to his chest. The mark blazed, and through it, Naruto felt something he hadn't felt in centuries, whole as fire. Not burning, warming. Filling the empty spaces where guilt had taken root. Because you're here, she said. You're still here. You could have given up any time. You could have let the first death win, let the rot consume you, let yourself fade into nothing. But you didn't. You kept going. You kept protecting. You kept. Her voice cracked. You kept loving even when it hurt. Even when it cost you pieces of yourself. That's not failure. That's the opposite of failure. The visions flickered. Iruka's disappointed face wavered, became something else, something ancient and hungry and wrong. You cannot win. The first death snarled, using Iruka's voice but losing the pretense. Even if you reach the summit, even if you slow Dialga's death, even if you delay my entry for 1,000 years, I am patient. I am eternal. I will wait. And when you finally break, when you finally lose everything that makes you who you are, I will be there. I will always be there. Naruto looked at the false Iruka. At the thing wearing his friend's face. At the enemy that had haunted him since the moment he killed the rot. And for the first time in 3 centuries, he felt something other than exhaustion or grief or quiet acceptance. He felt anger. You wear their faces, he said quietly. You use their voices. You tried to turn their love into weapons against me. He stepped forward, and the divine magic in his chest ignited, not the controlled burn he usually maintained, but something wilder, hotter, more human. But you don't understand love. You don't understand what it means to carry someone in your heart even after they're gone. You're empty. That's all you are. Emptiness wearing masks. The first death recoiled. Not physically, it had no body here, but something in its presence flinched. And I'm going to keep fighting you. Naruto continued. Not because I think I can win. Not because I'm brave or special or chosen. But because every person I've ever loved would want me to. Because Iruka taught me that losers can become heroes. Because Kakashi taught me that rules aren't as important as people. Because Jiraiya taught me that giving up on your dreams is the only real failure. Because Sakura believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Because Sasuke. His voice broke, then steadied. Because Sasuke was my brother, and brothers don't stop fighting for each other, even when one of them is dead and the other's lost. He reached out and grabbed the vision. His hand passed through Iruka's face and found something else, something cold and vast and terrified. The first death screamed, a sound that shattered rocks and sent Ilara stumbling backward. You are nothing, Naruto snarled. You're a shadow pretending to be a threat. But shadows only exist because there's light. And I. He pulled the divine magic deeper, let it merge with the last pieces of his humanity, let it become something new. I am full of light. Even now. Even after everything. I am still full of light. The first death's presence shattered. The visions dissolved. The mountain became just a mountain again, cold, steep, but real. And Naruto stood at its center, breathing hard, his hands smoking with divine residue, the black lines on his skin pulsing with fading light. Elara ran to him, threw her arms around him, buried her face in his chest. "You did it," she whispered. "You beat it." "Not beat." Naruto's voice was exhausted, hollowed out. "Pushed it back. There's a difference." He looked at his hands. They were less scarred than before. Smoother. Younger. Using that much divine magic had cost him something. More memories, more humanity, more pieces of who he used to be. But Elara was safe. They were still climbing. The summit was close. He looked at the wound in the sky. It was smaller now. Not healed, but less. His defiance had hurt the first death in ways he didn't fully understand. "Come on," he said, taking Elara's hand. "Dialga's waiting." They climbed the last stretch together, the immortal and the child, toward a god who was dying and a battle that was only beginning. The summit of Spear Pillar had become a tomb. Naruto felt it before he saw it, the wrongness radiating from the peak like cold from deep winter. Dialga's presence, which had once filled this space with the weight of eternity, now flickered like a candle in wind. Beside him, Elara gasped, her hand tightening on his. "It feels like..." She struggled for words. "Like time is dying." "It is." They crested the final ridge and stopped. Dialga lay sprawled across the ancient stones, his massive form almost unrecognizable. Crystals covered him completely now, not the scattered growths from before, but a continuous shell of violet translucence that swallowed his body from snout to tail. Only one eye remained visible, and it was dimming, the god's consciousness retreating inward as the crystal claimed him. The Gardevoir stood nearby, her ancient face unreadable. She turned as they approached. "You brought her." It wasn't a question. "I said I would." Naruto released Elara's hand but stayed close. "How long?" "Hours. Perhaps less. The crystallization accelerates as it nears his core. When it reaches the center of his being, time itself will..." She stopped. Shook her head slowly. "I do not know what will happen. Nothing like this has ever occurred." Elara stepped forward. Her eyes were fixed on Dialga, on the one visible eye that slowly tracked her movement. "What do I do?" she asked. Her voice was small but steady. "The dream showed me touching him, but not what happens after." Naruto looked at the Gardevoir. "You know more than you're telling." It wasn't an accusation. Just a statement. The Gardevoir met his gaze. For a long moment neither spoke. Then, quietly, she said, "Hoa's fire burns outside time. It exists in all moments simultaneously, past, present, future. If Elara can channel that fire into Dialga's core, it may burn away the crystal before it reaches his heart." "May?" "The fire will also burn her. Not physically, her body will survive. But she will experience every moment of Dialga's existence simultaneously. 10,000 years of memory, of suffering, of time, compressed into an instant. The human mind was not built for such things." Naruto's blood went cold. "She's 12. I am aware. There has to be another way. If there were, I would have suggested it." The Gardevoir's voice was gentle but unyielding. "The first death chose its target carefully. Dialga's crystallization is not random, it is designed to spread through time, to freeze every moment simultaneously. If we do not stop it here, there will be no later to find another way." Elara looked at Dialga. At the crystal consuming him. At the one eye that still watched her with something that might have been hope. "I'll do it," she said. "No." Naruto's voice was sharp. "You don't understand what you're offering. 10,000 years, Elara. You'll live 10,000 years in an instant. You'll come back, if you come back, as someone completely different. Assuming you come back at all." "I know." She turned to face him fully. Her two-old eyes were calm. "I've known since the dreams started. This is why Ho chose me. Not because I'm special, but because I'm small enough to fit through the cracks. A full god couldn't enter Dialga's heart without destroying it. A legendary would be too much. But a human child carrying divine fire." She touched her palm, where the mark glowed bright. "I'm the key. I always was." Naruto stared at her. At the child who should be worrying about scraped knees and friendship dramas, not sacrificing herself to save the concept of time. "No," he repeated. But his voice was weaker now. "Shadowlight." She used the name she had given him, the private name that was just for them. "You told me that love means standing beside people even when it hurts. Even when you can't win. Even when it costs everything." She stepped closer and took his hands. "This is my standing. This is what I was made for. Please don't take that from me." Naruto's throat closed. 3 centuries of loss, of grief, of watching people die, and now this. A child asking permission to sacrifice herself. A child he had promised to protect. I can't. He stopped. Swallowed. I can't lose someone else. Not again. Not you. You won't lose me. Elara squeezed his hands. I'll still be here. Different, maybe. But still here. And you'll still be you, sad and brave and full of light. And we'll keep walking together. Okay? He wanted to argue. Wanted to grab her and run, find another way, burn the first death out of existence with his own hands. But he had learned, across centuries, that some fights couldn't be won with power. Some fights required trust. Letting go. Believing that the people you loved could make their own choices. Okay. He whispered. The word felt like breaking. Okay. Elara smiled, a real smile, bright and young and full of hope. Then she turned and walked toward Dialga. The Gardevoir moved to stand beside Naruto. Together, they watched the child approach the dying god. She will not be the same, the Gardevoir said quietly. When this ends, the girl you brought here will be gone. What returns will be something else, still her, but more. Wiser. Older. Forever changed. I know. Can you love what returns? Naruto didn't answer immediately. He was watching Elara place her small hand on Dialga's crystal-covered snout, watching the mark on her palm flare with golden light, watching time itself begin to bend around her. I don't know, he finally admitted. But I'm going to try. The moment Elara's fire touched Dialga's crystal, the world stopped. Not figuratively. Not gradually. Stopped. The wind froze mid-gust. The clouds above held perfectly still. Naruto found himself unable to move, unable to breathe, trapped in a single eternal instant while something impossible unfolded before him. Elara's body went rigid. Her eyes, still open, still aware, filled with light. And through that light, Naruto saw everything. He saw Dialga's birth, emerging from Arceus's will as the embodiment of time itself. Saw the first moments of existence, when seconds had no meaning because nothing yet existed to measure them. Saw the god's loneliness, his confusion, his slow understanding of his purpose. He saw Dialga watch civilizations rise and fall. Saw him feel the weight of every moment that had ever existed, every life that had ever been lived, every death that had ever occurred. Saw him carry that weight without complaint, without rest, without end. He saw Dialga's pain as the first death touched him. Saw time scream as crystals formed across its skin. Saw the god's desperate attempt to protect his core, to push the crystallization outward even as it consumed him. And through it all, he saw Elara. She was not observing these memories, she was living them. 10,000 years of divine existence, compressed into moments. Her human mind, never designed for such things, stretched and bent and burned. But she did not break. Hoa's fire blazed within her, protecting her core even as the memories threatened to overwhelm her. And slowly, carefully, she began to push. Golden light spread from her palm, through Dialga's crystal shell, toward his fading heart. The crystals fought back. Violet light surged against gold, trying to extinguish it, trying to freeze it. The first death had invested too much in this victory to surrender easily. But Elara had something the first death lacked. She had love. Not abstract love for a concept or a duty. Real love. For a sad immortal who had saved her life. For a dying god who had never asked to suffer. For a world that had tried to burn her and failed. She poured all of it into the fire, let it fuel the light, let it burn away the crystal inch by agonizing inch. In the frozen moment outside, Naruto watched tears stream down her face. Watched her body shake with the weight of 10,000 years. Watched her refuse to fall. Fight, he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. Fight, Ember. You're almost there. The golden light reached Dialga's heart. For one eternal instant, time itself held its breath. Then the crystals shattered. The world resumed. Wind howled across the summit. Clouds churned overhead. And Dialga, freed from his crystal prison, his form flickering back to its proper state, lifted his head and roared. The sound was not anger. It was relief. The cry of a god who had stared into oblivion and been pulled back. But Naruto wasn't watching Dialga. He was watching Elara. She stood where she had been, her hands still raised, her eyes still open. But everything else about her had changed. The tooled quality that had always marked her face was gone, replaced by something truly ancient. Wisdom that should have taken millennia to accumulate looked out through her young eyes. She turned to face him. Shadowlight. Her voice was the same. But the weight behind it, the depth, was entirely new. Elara? He stepped forward, not knowing what he would find. Are you? I remember. She looked down at her hands, turning them over slowly. I remember everything. Every moment of Dialga's existence. Every life he's watched end. Every second of every day across 10,000 years. She looked up, and her smile was infinitely sad. I remember what it's like to be time. Naruto stopped. He didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to reach this person who wore Alara's face but carried the weight of eternity. The Gardevoir spoke softly. What do you feel? Alara considered the question. Her brow furrowed, a gesture so familiar it made Naruto's chest ache. Tired, she finally said. Very tired. But also, she touched her chest over her heart. Also warm. The fire is still there. Hoa's gift. It protected me. It let me experience everything without losing myself completely. She walked toward Naruto. Each step was measured, careful, as if she was still learning how to move in a body that felt too small. I saw you, she said when she reached him. In Dialga's memories. Not you specifically, but others like you. Guardians Arceus has chosen across eternity. There have been so many. And all of them. She reached up and touched his face, a gesture impossibly gentle. All of them eventually broke. Lost themselves. Became something other than what they started as. Naruto stood very still. I know. Do you know why they broke? He shook his head. Because they fought alone. Every single one of them. Arceus gave them power, purpose, immortality, but never company. Never someone to share the weight. They withered because isolation withers everything, given enough time. Alara's hand moved from his face to his chest, pressing over his heart. But you're different. You had Kurama. For 12 years, you had someone inside you, someone who understood loneliness as deeply as you did. And even after he was gone, you carried him with you. His warmth. His love. That's why you're still here when all the others faded. Naruto's eyes burned. No tears fell, they hadn't in centuries, but something close to them pressed behind his eyes. I don't feel like I'm still here, he whispered. Most days, I feel like a ghost pretending to be alive. I know. Alara's voice was infinitely gentle. I know exactly what that feels like now. 10,000 years of watching life pass by without truly living it. 10,000 years of being apart. She leaned her forehead against his chest. But we don't have to be apart anymore. I'm here now. I understand. And I'm not going anywhere. Naruto's arms came up slowly, hesitantly, and wrapped around her. She was so small. So fragile. But inside her burned a fire that had just survived 10,000 years of divine memory. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I've been alone for so long. I've forgotten how to. Me neither. Her voice was muffled against his chest. But we can learn together. That's what people do, right? They figure it out as they go? A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. Yeah. That's what they do. They stood like that for a long moment, the immortal and the child who was no longer a child, holding each other on a mountaintop where time had almost died. Behind them, Dialga stirred. Little guardian. Naruto looked up. Dialga's massive head had turned toward them, his eyes, fully present now, fully alive, fixed on Alara. Little fire. You have given me back my existence. I am in your debt. Alara pulled back from Naruto but kept one hand on his arm. I didn't do it for debt. I did it because it was right. I know. Dialga's voice was warm, almost amused. That is why the debt is real. Freely given gifts carry more weight than bargained exchanges. He shifted, his massive body flowing like water as he stood. The crystals that had covered him lay shattered across the summit, already beginning to fade, to dissolve into nothing. The first death will not stop, Dialga continued. This was one battle, not the war. It will find other targets. Other ways to enter. And when it does, then we'll be ready. Naruto's voice was steady now. We'll find a way to fight it. Permanently. Dialga regarded him. You speak as if you have a plan. I don't. But I have time. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Literally. I have you now, right? Time itself owes me a favor. The god actually laughed, a sound that vibrated through reality itself, making the mountains shake and the clouds part. I like this guardian, Dialga said to the Gardevoir. He has spirit. The Gardevoir inclined her head. He has something rarer. He has hope. After everything, he still has hope. Naruto looked down at Alara. She smiled up at him, exhausted but present, ancient but young, carrying 10,000 years and still choosing to stand beside him. Come on, he said quietly. Let's go home. Or as close to home as we have. She nodded, took his hand, and together they began the long walk down the mountain. Behind them, Dialga watched. The Gardevoir watched. And in the wound above, the first death watched too, not defeated, merely delayed, already planning its next move. But for now, on this mountaintop, at this moment, there was peace. It would not last. Nothing ever did. But it was enough. The descent took 2 days. Elara slept most of it, her small body finally surrendering to exhaustion after the ordeal on the summit. Naruto carried her, marveling at how light she was, how fragile, how utterly human despite the eternity she now carried in her mind. On the second night, she woke while he sat watching the stars. How much do you remember? He asked quietly. Of your life before? Before Dialga? She was silent for a long moment. Most of it. The temple. The priestesses. The fire. You. She shifted in his arms, looking up at him. The memories are still there. They're just smaller now. Like looking at a village from the top of a mountain. I can still see it, but it doesn't feel as close as it used to. Is that painful? Yes. Her voice was honest, unflinching. But also freeing. I used to be so afraid of losing my parents completely. Of forgetting their faces, their voices. No. She touched her temple. Now I have 10,000 years of faces. 10,000 years of voices. My parents are still in there somewhere, but they're part of something bigger. Part of everything. Naruto considered this. I've been afraid of forgetting for 300 years. Every memory that fades feels like a death. That's because you've been holding them alone. She reached up and touched his cheek. Memories need to be shared. That's how they stay alive. You've been trying to carry everyone by yourself, and that's too much for anyone. He closed his eyes. Her small hand was warm against his skin. I don't know how to share them, he admitted. Everyone who would remember with me is gone. Not everyone. She waited until he opened his eyes, until he met her gaze. Tell me about them. One at a time. Tell me about Iruka. About Kakashi. About Sakura. About Sasuke. About Kurama. Tell me, and I'll remember with you. And then they won't be gone anymore. Naruto stared at her. At this impossible child who had lived 10,000 years and still found room in her heart for his grief. Iruka, he said slowly, was the first person who ever looked at me and saw a person instead of a monster. He had a scar across his nose from a mission gone wrong. He used to buy me ramen when I couldn't afford it. He cried at my graduation, actually cried, like a proud parent, and I pretended to be annoyed but secretly I loved it. Elara listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer comfort, just received his words and held them. Naruto, she said when he finished, I think Iruka would be proud of you. Not because you're a guardian or immortal or powerful, but because you're still kind. After everything, you're still kind. He didn't answer. Couldn't. The words were stuck somewhere between his chest and his throat. But he held her a little tighter, and she let him, and the stars wheeled overhead, and for the first time in 3 centuries, Naruto felt something he had thought long dead. He felt held. They reached the base of Spear Pillar on the 3rd morning. The Gardevoir was waiting for them. She stood at the edge of the meadow where their journey had begun, her ancient eyes fixed on something in the distance. The first death moves again, she said without preamble. Not here, elsewhere. A place where the barriers between worlds are thin. A place called... She paused, and her voice carried something that might have been fear. A place called the Tree of Beginning. Naruto's blood went cold. He had heard of the Tree of Beginning. Every guardian had. It was the place where Mew, the ancestor of all Pokemon, slept. It was a nexus of life energy, of creation itself. If the first death targeted it, it would have a door, he said quietly. A door large enough to enter fully. Not just touch, not just crystallize, enter. Become real. Yes. Elara's hand found his. Then we go there. We stop it. Naruto looked down at her. At the exhaustion still shadowing her eyes, at the weight she still carried from Dialga's memories, at the absolute certainty in her young old face. You need rest, he said. You need time to process what happened. The first death won't wait for me to process. She squeezed his hand. I'm coming. Wherever you go, I'm coming. That's what we do now, remember? We figure it out together. The Gardevoir watched this exchange with something like wonder. You would take a child into the heart of the first death's next attack? I wouldn't take her anywhere. She's choosing to come. Naruto's voice was firm. And I'll die, again, before I let anything happen to her. That may not be enough. It never is. He looked at the horizon, toward the distant location of the tree of beginning. But it's what I have. Elara tugged his hand. Then let's go. Standing here won't save anyone. Naruto nodded. He turned to the Gardevoir. Will you come? The ancient Pokemon considered. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she shook her head. My place is here. Dialga still needs watching. The crystallization may have damaged him in ways we cannot see. And someone must guard the mountain, in case the first death returns. I understand. But I will give you this. She extended one slender hand, and from it, a small crystal floated toward Naruto, clear, perfect, pulsing with inner light. A piece of Dialga's gratitude. If you are ever trapped outside time, crush it, and he will find you. Naruto took the crystal. It was warm in his palm, heavier than it looked. Thank you? No. Thank you? The Gardevoir looked at Elara, then back at him. You have given me something I thought lost forever. Proof that bonds between humans and Pokemon can still be sacred. That love, real love, not duty or obligation, still exists in this broken world. She bowed, a deep, formal gesture that spoke of ancient courtesies. Go, Guardians. Save what can be saved. And when you return, if you return, know that you have allies here. Naruto tucked the crystal into his clothing. Then, without another word, he gathered Elara in his arms and folded. The world dissolved around them, mountain, meadow, Gardevoir, and reformed as something else entirely. A forest of crystal. A sky of impossible colors. And at its center, a tree that was not a tree, pulsing with the life force of every Pokemon that had ever existed. The tree of beginning. And standing before it, waiting for them, something that should not exist. The first death had arrived first. The tree of beginning did not grow so much as breathe. Its crystalline branches pulsed with slow, rhythmic light, the heartbeat of all Pokemon existence, the source from which Mew had first emerged and to which all life eventually returned. Naruto had seen many wonders across 3 centuries, but this place humbled him, reduced him to something small and odd. The first death did not share his reverence. It stood before the tree's massive trunk. If stood was the word for something that had no fixed form. It shifted between shapes, none of them quite right. A human silhouette that kept dissolving. A Pokemon outline that never stabilized. An absence wearing the memory of presence. Behind it, the ground had already begun to crystallize. Violet light spread outward in fractal patterns, consuming the crystal forest's natural glow, replacing it with frozen stillness. You came, the first death said. Its voice was 1,000 screams compressed into language. I hoped you would. It makes this so much more satisfying. Naruto set Elara down gently, positioning her behind him. His hands were already glowing, divine magic responding to the proximity of pure evil. Leave this place, he said. Leave this world. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. No. The first death's form shifted, momentarily resembling the rot he had killed, a final insult, a reminder. I have waited longer than your universe has existed. I have pressed against the barriers of reality since before Arceus first spoke creation into being. I am tired of waiting. So am I. Naruto stepped forward. But you don't see me trying to unmake existence. You unmake it every day, little guardian. Every time you forget a face. Every time you lose another piece of yourself. Every time you wonder if any of this matters. The first death's voice softened, became almost gentle. I am not your enemy. I am your future. The emptiness that waits for all things. The stillness that comes after struggle. I am. You're nothing. Elara's voice cut through the air like a blade. The first death's attention shifted to her. Its form rippled with something that might have been surprise.